My name is Adrian Velasquez, and today I'll be presenting my project, Green Farming. So the purpose of this experiment was to investigate which type of vertical farm design would help promote the most amount of plant growth. My question was, which type of vertical farm design, between cylindrical and rectangular, will help promote the most clean plant growth? My hypothesis was, if the bean seeds are planted in cylindrical and rectangular vertical farms, then the bean plants going inside of the cylindrical vertical farm would grow the most because sunlight would be able to enter the building equally from all angles. Some of the materials that I used in my experiment include a drill, a lever, 7 wooden poplars, 2 plywood boards, 1 packet of Velcro, 20 feet of clear vinyl, 106 screws, 53 brackets, silicone sealant, 16 bolts, a silicone sealant gun, 24 Zephyrhills water bottles, pliers, 16 nuts, 1 bag of potting mix, a jigsaw, a sander, a ruler, a tape measure, a syringe that measures up to 10 milliliters of water, 24 black bean seeds, some water, a box cutter, and some tape, cable ties. Some of the variables in my experiment are included as such. My independent variable is the type of vertical farm design that I use. My dependent variable is the end height of the bean plants. Some of the control variables in my experiment include the same type of materials used for the vertical farm construction, same type of potting mix used for the bean plants, same type of black bean seeds planted, same date that the plants are planted, same amount and type of water, the same bottles used as pots, it's the same amount of area on both of the vertical farms, same amount of depth that the bean seeds were planted, the same location where the experiment took place, the same dates and time where the plants were planted. And then I have a control group in this experiment, and it was all on one level on a piece of plywood board, and it went 1, 2, 3, 4, which I'll explain later. And then in the outside, since there was no second level, it had a 5, 6, 7, 8 in between the cracks of those two in between. And for my procedures, first I built the 2 buildings. Then after that, I took the Zephyrhills water bottles, cut them 3 inches from the lid. Then I would take the silicone sealant, put it on the bottom of the lid, and then basically align it with the plus marks I made inside of both the rectangular and cylindrical vertical farms, and then put them there on both of the levels. Then once I've done that with all of them and with the control group, of course, then I put the soil all the way to the top, and after that I'd plant the bean plants 1/4 of an inch deep into the soil. Then after that I'd water the plants 20 milliliters of water for the first 3 days, and then for the next 4 days I'd water them 10 milliliters of water, and then for the last 4 days of the experiment I'd water them 20 milliliters of water. Okay, so for my data, a lot of them didn't sprout, and if you look at the charts, there's so many zeros, so many did not sprout, and I think something interfered with this experiment, and I think that's because the reason why a lot of these didn't sprout was because I think it was because I did not give them enough water, because I gave them 20 milliliters of water for the first 3 days, because then I shrunk it down and I think all the seedlings died then, and then it would start to rot and so on and so forth. But overall, the cylindrical building had the largest amount of total height. The rectangular building had less total height in centimeters, but the control group had a larger total plant height than both of these groups. And over time, the circular building had more plant growth than the rectangular building. So some of the prototypes that I used in my experiment include an earlier one. Before I even started this experiment, before I even used these 2 prototypes for my experiment, I used an earlier prototype in which it had a circle already cut out, and I had a bigger base at the same time. But then once I developed the concept and everything, I took and made the rectangular and the cylindrical vertical farms, which had the same base area. And then some of the scientific concepts in my experiment include capillary action, which is when the water stickiness to its own molecules and the water stickiness to other objects allows it to slowly travel up through tiny cracks and let's say cloth to eventually defy gravity and go over the other side. And then I have the concept of greenhouses because my vertical farm is basically like a multi-story greenhouse. So the greenhouse's effect is whenever sunlight enters into the greenhouse, and then that energy is absorbed by the plant leaves. And then the plant leaves radiate that energy into thermal energy. And then that thermal energy, the wavelengths of that thermal energy are so long that the thermal energy cannot escape the building, leaving the building warm throughout the entire day. Some of the alternative things that could have happened in my experiment include a triangular building, because before I did this experiment, I did another experiment. And that experiment did not go well because I had a triangular building in it that was in the shape of a right triangle if you look at it from the top side. And it kept on falling over, and the plants and the seeds kept on falling out of their pots. And I just couldn't with that experiment. I had to scratch it and redo it again. And then I was going to use capillary action, but then I tested a bunch of strings and the water wasn't going up them, so I decided to just not use that and instead water them myself. Now, the real world application to this experiment is that there's really not that much more arable land in this world. The arable land has completely run out. We've cut down all the trees that we can to replace them with farms. There's no more land that's really good for farming available in this world, and yet we are cutting down trees. That's not the way to go. In the future, we're going to be forced to build upwards in our farms, because building outwards in our farms, it's not going to go successful because there's literally no more land to farm on based on the demand we will have for all these plants and stuff due to the future population of the world, which will be around 10 billion people. We're not going to be able to support that. While at the same time, these types of buildings can be built in places like New York City, and it would save huge amounts in fuel costs because you wouldn't have to travel from the Midwest, say, to the East Coast. You can just travel from one part of the city to the next, making it much easier to travel, much less expensive for the companies, and that they wouldn't have to hire as many truck workers. And then for my conclusion, I can't really say that I have a conclusion because a lot of the plants did not sprout, and I think it was because I messed up on the watering amounts. But anywho, the cylindrical building got 3 successful trials, but the other ones didn't. So I can't necessarily say that one of them did the best. But I'm going to infer that the cylindrical building did the best in this experiment because it had a higher total height and everything. But I can't really say that this is a correct conclusion because I don't have enough data. Although I conducted in 8 trials, I don't have enough data to support my hypothesis.